So we say things and we think we know what it means, but we don't really know what it means. All right, so with the recovery point of view, if you get to on how it works, that chapter and the one precedes it, he basically pinpoints that it's selfishness, self-centeredness, you know, that's what we think is the root of the problem, yes? So, and it goes on and on and on, and it will kill you if it's not dealt with, and so forth, so forth. And it basically says, and you can't do anything fucking about it, and probably no other human power can, so you better find some other solution, yeah? So of course, and then they follow it up with some nice, very clear statements. The problem resides in the mind, you know, a mental state. So how can you use that to, you know, practice the solution, yes? Yeah, it would be insane, wouldn't it? Would you go to the problem to ask for its advice about the solution? Obviously not. Yet we're taking our own advice, not our own advice, the mental state's advice all day. And so if something that can kill you, which is unattended to alcoholism and addictions, if they can kill you, you don't want the problem to have any say in the solution, I would imagine. So people still believe in what their head's telling them. They go, oh, I don't feel like going to that meeting tonight, or I don't feel like this and that, and then they're going to be feeling like shit. Pretty fast. Yeah? So the whole thing is, if the exact nature of the wrong isn't obsession with self, but identification as self, then the game's totally different, because then even if you study 2 years concern around, you know, obsession with self, that could be obsession with self, yes. And in recovery we say self can't get out of self. This is the biggest thing in the whole program. Self can't get out of self. So if self's the problem and self can't get out of self, that's a big fucking problem if you're identified as self. Yeah, because if you're identified as self, the only way you can think about self to get out of it as something other than you, and yet you're identified as a self. So then self is going to try to get out of self, and good luck, because it's self trying to get out of self, going, and then self going back into self, and then self going back out of self. But the selfing, the true bondage, the identification, is seemingly there when you're up the ass of self and when you're out of the ass of self. You're still feeling like a someone. You feel like a long-lasting, independent, separate entity. That's the bondage. The bondage is there when you're holding on, and it's there when you're letting go. Because it's a feeling of you that's holding on to something and you that's letting go of something. That feeling of you, that sense, that vague sense, it's Paul, and Paul as pictured in the thought system as a body, yeah? That to me is where the bondage of self is. And it's a beautiful statement. We say, please relieve us of the bondage of self, because that word of could have been used as to, and it would have meant totally something else. So if it was bondage to self, it would mean self's a real fucking thing, and I'm a real thing, and I've been bound to it by some kind of handcuff or something. And if I could find the right formula or the key, I could be released just as I am from the bondage to that which I'm not, which is self. Yeah? But it doesn't say that. It says bondage of self. So the bondage is of self. Without self in place, there is no experience of bondage. Just like in Old English, they say, you know, James of Kent. Yeah, so James came from Kent. Yeah. Susan of, you know, whatever. Norwich, you know. So Susan comes from Norwich. Without Norwich, in a sense, there would be no Susan of Norwich. Yeah, because Susan came from Norwich. So bondage is of self. So it's an activity. Yeah. So we're entertaining that we're a long-lasting, independent, separate entity called self. And in that entertaining of it, which is what the thought system's doing all day, we're bound to this idea that we are that which we're entertaining. So when you want to be free, you can't entertain being free from it, you entertain being free as it. And that's still the bondage of self. Yeah. Just like when self claims peace, what does it do with peace? It uses it to be worried about, will there be peace tomorrow? So it uses peace to produce agitation. That's what it does. That's what selfing does. So in my view, and this is what was revealed, I wish it hadn't happened in one way. I would have had a better career if I was, showing you some exercises and having you come back every week to increase your position to a higher position, which could take years, which would mean you'd have to support me in your endeavors. But it didn't happen that way. The rug got pulled out of my fucking business plans. And I got stuck with this, which is nothing, basically. If you came here a year ago, I'm saying the exact same thing, basically. I said 2 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago. It hasn't changed because to me, not even to me, but to whatever it is, there's no point to go any farther unless this is clear. Because this is going to be the shadow that's going to follow every other move. It is. I've seen it in my own life. Yeah, I saw it. I saw exactly what I'm sharing today hit me all of a sudden when I was busily improving my spiritual condition, being in India, wearing whites and meditating and going to hear people speak of lovely things. And then I read this goddamn statement in a book that put a ruin to everything, which is, hey, there's a presupposing of a non-existent thing wanting to get salvation for the non-existent thing. So I was trying to get freedom as a self, from a self, for a self. It wasn't going to work out. And it wasn't personal. It wasn't because of me it wasn't going to work out, but it was because of me it wasn't going to work out. The formula doesn't work. And, AA warns us, self can't get out of self. Well, maybe all the attempts we're applying right now could be construed as just that. Self trying to get out of self. Yeah, good luck. So this was a clear hit that, because I was I was a fucking pretty good seeker, a spiritual seeker. I had a good resume, been to India a few times. I did retreats in forest monasteries in Thailand. I did a retreat in Marin at the Upper Middle Way, Spirit Rock, very high-end, lovely food, better room than where I lived. I didn't want to leave the retreat center, not because I wanted to meditate any longer. It was a better place, better food, eagle claw bathtub, great bed. They kicked me out, basically. So when this news broke, it was sort of upsetting to what I'm not, the idea of selfing, because it didn't have many pegs to hang its hat on. I was a house painter at that point. I had been losing interest in house painting for years. I started to suck at what I used to do. And I was a good spiritual seeker. That's the only hat I could hang on, and then that was taken out from underneath me. Like someone pulled my spiritual pants down, and thank God I didn't pull them back up. I just walked around naked. What the fuck am I doing? And then obviously something had grace, mercy on me and downloaded the solution, which is, you are not that, So now suddenly when I saw that which I was calling myself to be as something other, the first possibility that dawned on me, like instantaneously, that hadn't been available for years, which is, I can be free from it. But first I had to see that I was identified as it. I hadn't noticed that. So all my desires and drives to be free were neutered or perverted or tainted by trying to be free as that which I need freedom from. Yeah? I was stuck in this little Chinese thumb thing. I wanted freedom. I had a noble, earnest, sincere desire, but the desire got perverted by what was claiming it. So that which I wanted to get relief from was acting as me and trying to get relief as. Yeah. And suddenly the correction was put in place, and it's never been unplaced since then. And then a lot got revealed because you really know or can learn about the problem from the solution. If you got relief from the problem, you would start to know what the problem was, because it stopped being what the problem is for you. You would see it in a past tense sort of way. Let's say the activity had now been frozen and you could see the beast without it fucking flaying all of its little antennas and arms. You could actually see it. And when you see it, it's not you. Yeah. And now the freedom is aligned with the appropriate view. You're not trying to get free as it. You're not trying to improve as it. You're not trying to get better as it. You're getting better and improving from it. You know what I mean? And then what you thought you truly needed to do from self, you may not need to do from out of self. You may see all that activity of trying to get out of an imaginary place was reinforcing the belief in you that it was a real place. Because who would ever want to try to get out of an imaginary place? So there's an incredible investment. I've been spending years trying to get out. I'm not going to fucking admit that it's imaginary. I've got way too many clothes and zafus and fucking things. I can't give this up. It's got to be real or it makes me look like an idiot. Exactly. So really. And you'll get over it quickly, I'm telling you. You will. Instead of fighting it. So if you see that which you wanted to get out of for such a long time was an imaginary place, what more would you need to do about it?
Acceptance.
Exactly. It wouldn't motivate any action. It would motivate a pause and a peace and a relaxation, because now you don't need ladders, you don't need ropes, you don't need this, because you're not pulling yourself out of something you could never possibly be in. That's what happens. And then suddenly you realize, just like when you were a kid, you were never thinking, Mom, do you think I'm in the moment? You know what I mean? I feel like I'm out of the moment, Mom. I think Wayne plays a lot better than I do. I think he's really getting the gusto out of the life. It's something. No, you weren't thinking that you hadn't thought of the insane idea you could be out of a moment when you were a young kid. You were just fucking where you are because you hadn't thought you could be anywhere else. And that's what people are trying to meditate for years to get back to. It's just a simple recognition of what actually is so. So here, many of us are trying to get into a moment when we cannot possibly be out of one, and then we're trying to get out of what we cannot possibly be in. We're trying to get out of self, and we cannot possibly be in it. Yeah? Now the action figure, let's say, and this is an action figure, it has its role here. It's the driving force, you know. It's driving, it's going through over the mountains and everywhere like that. It goes get the deliveries. It has experiences like this. It has its own little agenda, yes? But it's definitely not meant to be seen as the center of the universe. It's definitely not meant to see this giant magnetized magnifying glass called the mental state. Just like, and then finds it, and it's all about you from then on. That you've had millions of thoughts going through whatever you are, and yet about 98% of them have always been about you. It's too much for the body to be the center of the universe. It's too much for the body to be everything you think about. It really is. It just fucking springs fly out. It gets neuroses, it gets totally perverted introspection, constantly thinking of itself all day. I mean, it's way too much. Yeah? It's sort of like here, every day you're walking around in the sun, it's fantastic. But if that sun got magnified onto one object, you'd be incinerated in a second, yeah? That's like the mind. The mental state is a powerful fucking lens for it to constantly be hovering over you, having you under surveillance all day. You know what I mean? It's just it's way, if you could have real relief from it, you would know that's the problem. You really would. There would be no ifs, ands, or buts, and then you'd realize the glorious revelation AA brought to people. because they were damn fucking close. They exactly knew who the thief was, but they didn't get to the point of calling it themselves. And it says in our book, hey, people are going to come after us and add on to it. This is a humbly adding on to it. And I'm only adding on to it because it's been verified in my living. Relief stabilized. Like it says in page 84, the problem does not exist for me as anymore. But when for that to stabilize, it's the time when the problem does not exist as you anymore. That's when the stabilized. See, that's an experience. You have experiences that the problem doesn't exist for you. But the state of real relief is when it doesn't exist as you. And I'm humbly saying it has never existed as you. It's more like a parasite, yes? It's living off of us, the host, and it's having a life through ours, basically. That's what it does. And it presents us as a body, and then we become the object of being thought about all day. And it's not enough we can think about ourselves now. It built this imaginary place called the past and the future just to go fucking hard wild about thinking about us. Because in what's not happening, anything can happen. You could have cancer, test it, can just whatever you can come up with, it can obsess over. Because it's not happening. There's no evidence that can dispute it because it's actually not happening. You know? But the beautiful thing, there is something that is happening. It doesn't have all the ability and qualities what's not happening offers, but it does have one quality what's not happening doesn't have, which is it's happening. You may not like it, but this is happening. There's seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, and touching going on right now. Why wouldn't that's a good anchor. Might as well, let's see how life reveals itself from that position. Because we're definitely getting the interpretation of this position every day, all day. Why not, hey, what would happen if I looked at the day from where I actually am? And then you realize, that's not happening. Again, just like if you're not in a hole, then you don't need to get out of it. Well, if it's not happening, why would you want to apply a lot of solutions to that which isn't happening? You would just be here like when you were a kid. And there'd be no dispute because this is so fucking obvious that this can override any case that can be built by the greatest lawyer fronting for what's not happening, because this is happening. I'm feeling, seeing, tasting, touching. You know what I mean? It's not like, I hope this totally eclipses all the data, millions of thoughts and ideas about what's not happening. Like this, just by noticing this. Yeah? It's like simply being awake to being awake. You're awake right now. Consciousness is experiencing through this interface, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching. If it had 30 doors of senses, there'd be 30 experiences you'd be having. That which is experiencing consciousness is not limited by what it goes through to experience. Some insects have 7 senses. We have 6, really. 5 physical and then 1 mental, where the mind hears thoughts. Yeah? Those are the 6 senses. So consciousness is this is the interface, so consciousness meets itself basically 6 different ways. It could be 800 different ways. Yeah? But the mental state, which is of the brain, arises after the conscious contact, and then it presupposes this little story, which is you're the body and you're before everything else. So you're the one who's conscious as a body. You're the thinker of all the thoughts as the thinker. You're the feeling of all the feelings as the feeler. This is what it does. It gives name and form to an imaginary fucking phantom. Yeah? And then it just riffs on that all day. Your head, even when you think of yourself as a spirit, it's framed as a body. When you dream at night, it's usually in bodies. Yeah? The whole mental state, the whole brainscape is all about reinforcing its premise that you are this thing. Yeah? And then when you take that to be so, then your own nature, if you want to call it spirit, is relegated to a position of a topic to you. Either you, maybe today I'll, look into spirituality. I'm not that busy today. Maybe I'll throw in a couple of coins. Yeah, read a little book, maybe. But you are spirit. St. Francis, a great friend, whatever, monk or something, he said, purportedly, supposedly, that what's looking is what you're looking for. What the hell is what's looking now? He doesn't say who's looking, because that's the mistake. What's looking? The same consciousness is looking at this location as it is this location. There's no fucking difference at all. There isn't. You're seeing, and is it taking you any effort to see me? If your eyes work, there's no effort at all, is there? Does it take any thought or effort to see, hear, feel, taste, touch? No, not at all. All day, every day. Now, if the ear isn't working, yes, then that will impair it, but it doesn't impair the consciousness. Yeah. So this is the realm of being. See, we're thinking we're something, and then there's being. Being is quite different. Yeah. Being doesn't exert any effort or thought. It doesn't need any thinking about it to believe it's so. It just is. It's self-evidential because it is. Yeah? It doesn't have any big advertising to convince you that you're it. It just is. And it's never not is. And then the mental state is more an interpretation of this event with you as at the center. That's why we call it self-centeredness. Yeah? Self becomes the center of this whole system, and the center is a fraud, and therefore the system is fraud. Or as we say in AA, it's a failed system. And it's very, very clearly explained in recovery. It says, why are you in so much fear today? Well, let me think about it. No, do not think about it. Isn't it because self-reliance has failed you? Oh, wait a minute, I thought fear was the cause of all this shit. And maybe it is, but what's the cause of fear? In AA's view, it's self-reliance. Yeah? And not talking about fear, because fear is an emotion. We're talking about mental anxiety that mimics fear. Because most people, when fear is a valid thing to arise when there's a threat, but we're reacting as if there is a threat when there isn't any all fucking day. That's produced by mental anxiety. Yeah? That can only be produced not by the activity of the mental state, but by our having faith in the activity. We're believing that that's possible, and therefore we take it and we make it seem to be so. That's how powerful we are, and we have no fucking idea how powerful we are. We're the dreaming of this place right now. There is no place, there's just dreaming of a place. That's how powerful we are. And that power, when it's subjugated to the agenda of the mental state, you'll have so much vindictiveness and wanting to be right and having to make others wrong and constantly judging your inside to other people's outside. It's just ad nauseum. When you were young, I remember a period of time, I wasn't in an abusive situation. When I was just running around, I'd run into a room, run here, naked, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then there was a point where everything I ever did after that fact was accompanied by thought. The thought system developed, and then it just hovered over my childlikeness like a fucking thick weather front, which was so claustrophobic, all my attention just enveloped on itself back into things. And all I become, I was constantly listening to the thoughts about me. That's what I wanted to drink. And that's why it was a fucking valid feeling, based in ignorance, but that was one of the most authentic feelings I ever had was, I gotta get out of here. I cannot take it. So the thoughts are totally different if they're held as not yours. If they're held as your thoughts, they have a huge amount of weight. If they're held as thoughts, they don't have as much weight. So you travel light. Same thing with feelings. Same thing with same thing with actions. Yeah, you would be able to forgive an action, but very rarely your own. Yeah, because it has a different meaning. The my The my is the biggest movement of the parasite in our life. It claims that it's before what it actually comes after. It claims to be the one that's doing all this shit when it has very little to do with it. Just like I always use the old simple example where I was in New York giving a talk and a person who hadn't seen me in a year or two came and he said, "Paul, hey, you're growing your hair." And I went, "Yes, I'm growing my hair. You know, and I look pretty good. You haven't seen it yet, but it's good, doing well." And he was balding. I was going, "Well, you're not doing so well on this topic." So I have joined a group that we grow our hair together, and I notice it grows better, so I think you should come. You're going to have to come a couple times a week because there's a lot to sort of improve on. But, you know, and then you could go on and have pride about it, but how are you actually growing your hair? No, you're just not cutting it. Basically, and if you listen to the language, not just yap it, thinking you're the one who's talking, if you actually listen to what's coming out of this voice box, most of it says you have a lot to do with shit you have nothing to do with. It's constantly claiming positions of authority and power that it has no right at all to claim. And we just keep believing it and listening to it. Why? Why would, if a big nasty bug came in here and landed on your arm, you would knock it off in a second? If it came 30 times, you'd knock it off each time. The parasite of alcoholism, and actually the mother and father of it all, the selfing, is much more hostile than that bug. Then why the hell don't we shake it off? Because it's got the greatest strategy of any parasite. It has convinced the host that it's the parasite. So we're living to defend that which we're not. Or as we say in AA, when you come in AA, hey, you got to be willing to save your ass instead of your face. But when I came in, I thought my face was my ass. That's it. I was living for the image that the mental state had about me than my ass. You see it, man. It's possible for real freedom. You will never be free as a self. It will always be conditional. And time will be your biggest deterrent, because time and everything, all the conditions that the self would base its freedom on, change. You may be fired. You may lose all the money in the stock market. Your wife may leave, this and that. It's like a guy I've worked with in the past, and some of his friends, he'd go out again and they'd ask me to help him. And I said, well, you better get all his kids in the same room, because his condition's based on his kids' condition. All his kids weren't getting loaded or anything like that. So I can't talk to him. It's going to do no good. I got to talk to the whole family. Because, yes, this is what happens. This is what happens. We're living after the fact of a heist. And then we're so paranoid someone's going to do it. It's already occurred. The parasite is basically living a life through the one you gave it. And if you don't think it's a parasite, it's just a way of picturing it as something other than you, then you do a little sociological study of, let's say, this recovery community here. Let's take 3,000 of them, 3,000 guys and women, and you look, all different ethnicities, all different intellectual levels, all different educational, whatever, financial, and yet how many of them will inevitably park at those 3 parking spaces of institution, jails, and death? You've got to see there's just one driver that's driving all of us. It's always available. You hear people share at meetings. They're right almost at the point where they're going, oh, I love coming here. So everyone thinks just like I do, and they feel like I do, and they've done the shit I've done. And yes. What's the next step? If everyone thinks like you do, they can't be your fucking thoughts. Your proprietary idea. If everyone feels like me, they can't be my feelings. You see? When the feeling is held as mine, it just produces like a cocoon, thick shell of terminal uniqueness. You feel no one does the things you do. No one's ever thought the things you do. No one. It's like a suppository that went up your rectum that you never thought of ever taking back out. So the feelings no one's ever felt like I did, no one's ever thought the things I thought. Give me a break. Go to about 30 meetings, and you realize, Jesus Christ, this is what happened to me. I listened for a few months, and I could only come to two conclusions. How did they get my thoughts? Or they're not mine. And that latter proposition was incredibly spacious. It brought me a huge amount of relief. When I saw the thoughts as not mine, they lost a lot of sway over me. As long as I was calling them mine, I was in a fucking love grip with them. Yes? Just like if you were in a park and there'd be 30 kids playing, and one of them was you, which one of the 30 kids, you'd be looking at the one kid that was yours. The same fucking thing. You're looking like the mental state looks at the thoughts like they're its kids. They're my thoughts. Your interest and attention is glommed onto them. Yeah? This is what we drink for. It's unbearable up there. So it gives us a solution. In the mental state, its idea of surrender is fuck it. That's what it does. It attempts to bring you to this point of fucking. Yeah, it could happen quickly or slowly. Sometimes it has to work really hard. For 2 weeks, it's got to keep talking to you. They're out to get you. You know, they try to get you. And then suddenly you land in fuck it, and then at fuck it, it gives you a solution, which is, oh, get loaded, fuck it. Yeah, and then what happens? You give the fuel, not to you, but to the parasite. The parasite grows stronger. Now it's going to use you for transportation for a few weeks. It's going to ride you like a fucking jockey. And it's going to leave you in places you would never choose to go. And a lot of the places we're left, we've all been there, so you have to fucking read the clues. It's not all of us coming up randomly with these ideas that lead us to the same fucking place. It's one parasite feeding off of all of us. And if you don't see it as other, you'll be looking from it your whole life. You have to see it. That's what happened with me. I saw it first, then it explained a lot. But now all I can do is explain a lot, hopefully that you'll see it. Basically. I think it can go either way. So if you see it, you can't be it. Yeah? It's not, all it is an activity. There is no self. There is really no parasite. It's just a movement, and you're actually behind the movement in some ways because you're believing it. You're having faith in it. And as Jesus says, it's done according to your belief. Well, that's what happens. And as you think, so it is. There you go. The thinking's powerful, especially when it's turbocharged with the mind. Yeah, one thought can ruin your day. One thought, that one thought, finding expression for you, when it compels an action for you, can tattoo you by that action for 50 years in prison. One thought of killing somebody at one time, when you've had it hundreds of times, that one thought breaks through the membrane of immunity and compels this body to take an action, you're in San Quentin the rest of your life. That's the power of it. Yeah? I've seen it. I've met people like that. Some people have killed somebody in a blackout. They can't even remember the day that's created the rest of their life. This is what happens. Right now, there's tons and tons of thoughts, and none of them are ours. It's when we believe we're the thinker of it, we hit the little key on the computer, it goes to me cloud, and these thoughts download. And then they're injected by and now you're fucked. You're living an interpretation. And if you're not fucked now, you'll be shortly fucked. It's going to spin a yawn, and you're going to believe it. And you're going to bring life to it, and that's going to bring death to you. That's what happens. I've seen it over and over again, before and after I got sober, by living in this community. So, now switching over to this idea of non-duality, which is another branch of what's happening here. Non-duality is a very ancient invitation. Yeah, it was in the Vedas, probably the earliest scriptures known to man. And non-duality is a simple idea of not two. Yeah? So here we're in a world of two, yes? There's me and you, there's this and that, there's day and night, all like this. And all that non-duality is a simple negation of how things seem to be. It's not saying how it really is, it's just questioning how it seems to be. And then to see your role in it. Yeah? Because if your role in it is noticed, then the role can change dramatically. Because if you're the dreaming of the dream, if the dreaming of the dream realized it was the dreaming of the dream, things could change. Yeah, because it would stop being identified with the dreamt, which is this, and now we would see it as dreaming, and what things would go out of the window? Blaming others. Because nothing's ever happened to you that anyone did to you. You were in cahoots with it all. Yeah? It does a whole lot. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, to me, AA is a way of life, or like a path for illumination to express, yeah? This is the illuminating quality, non-duality. But AA is a way of life, yeah? This action figure needs a way of life because this action figure's whole experiential event here is of time, yeah? So we can get sober, but we can't stay sober because of time, basically. Because situations change, and what was bearable one day, the next day isn't bearable, yeah? So this is a way, this is a path of illumination, AA. But what will illuminate the path is you, as light, not as a body, as the light of spirit. And that's non-duality. That's the basis of it. And any great written shit about spirituality, if it's worth its salt, always leads to the same point of not to, you know? Nothing really ever happened to you. There's just been a dreaming of it. Just like every night we go to bed and everything we went through that day is dismissed in deep sleep as if it never happened. That's actually the closer to the reality than all this banana shit. Banana shit, how did I come from? I was thinking of something before, mixed it. I was thinking a recipe on one channel, the non-dual channel, and I got the recovery channel. I'm playing all at once. So it's beautiful, simple invitation. Yeah? Like people get in touch with me, well, if I'm not a self, then why do I need to do the steps? Well, just let's say a diabetic wakes up, does they stop taking insulin? Of course not. Their body has diabetes. Alcoholism is in the brain, yes? It's affecting the brain's transmission of light. It's making it very self-centered. It's turning attention and interest on itself, but as a thing, as an object. That's what it's doing. That's what selfing is, yeah? So the way of life is needed for the action figure. My spirit doesn't go off the cliffs, this does, yeah? My spirit never got arrested, this does. My spirit never overdosed, this does. This needs fucking something. It needs a set of principles like a North Star that are sound so that it can live a day at a time without causing that. Like for me, as soon as I drank out there, I realized I had magnetic appeal to people uniform. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Now, over the time, the severity of what happened when I got loaded, I got run over twice in one night. Tons of shit happened to me. I realized there's a lot of power going on, and man, and what's directing it is gonna fucking burn this little carcass up pretty quickly. I better surrender and let something else run the spotlight because I can't be having it trained on me all day. I swear to God, I could be, if I got loaded now, I'd be arrested in a couple of hours on Clement Street. I know it. Suddenly cops would just pull over because it's like I have this magnetic appeal. Well, now the same energy, surrendered, gets dispersed. It's bright, it's inclusive, it helps others, all like that. It's incredible. Same energy, but it's in the hands that is directing the energy that makes its effects. Yes? It's just energy. Faith is just mind force. Faith, not a faith. Faith, yeah? And what most of us as addicts have is a faith in the thought system. That's why we're living in so much anxiety and what's not happening. It's the faith that makes it seem to be so. What's not happening cannot make itself seem to be happening. But what's not happening, entertained by us, we can make it seem to be happening. That's how powerful we are, yeah? So I need something. This whole program of recovery isn't about changing, it's about being changed. You put yourself into the system of AA and you will change. Yeah? You're not directing the change, you're not producing the change, you're going under the change. Yeah? You're surrendering and you're submitting yourself to be affected. And you will, and what's going to happen is, it will guarantee, if that spiritual condition is maintained, and the greatest way to maintain a spiritual condition to me is to be a spiritual condition, you'll be free from the effects of alcoholism a day at a time. And it's proven to be so for 28 years now. I never think about it, never feel anything about it, never have actually since I got sober. It's like the problem truly does not exist for me, which is an amazing solution. It's the only fucking solution I've ever run into other than the non-duality that's worth its terminology of solution. Because it put the fucking problem to rest, basically. I mean, completely. That's unbelievable to me. Because most of the shit that's being peddled as solutions to me aren't solutions here. You got to keep re-upping and reinvigorating and turbocharging. It's constantly fighting a giant current of the problem. You know, very, very rarely winning completely. You just sort of subdue it for a little while so you can not flip out at the picnic you're at that day. But then it's on you again the next day. No, this solution is the problem does not exist as you or for you anymore. That's a fucking solution. Yeah. And then if you build the right habits, because this is, if the problem resides in the mind, you cannot have the mind involved in your recovery. And the best way to do that is the first year of recovery, get into the right habits, which are actions without thought. When the problem resides in the thoughts, actions without thoughts, and that will be the greatest insurance policy you have. So like for me, I don't think about, should I go to a meeting? I think, which one? Yeah? The habit of going to a meeting is ingrained in my life now. Ingrained in it. Yeah? And all the other things I was introduced to that first year are now ingrained in it. It's the best insurance policy to keep you on the straight and narrow. Spirit does not need to be directed. It's the directing. This body needs to be directed. It's either going to be directed by this insane GPS we've been listening to. This fucking failed GPS. Its newest maps are from 1973. Look at what used to happen to you all day. Oh, I just want to have a good time tonight. All right, plug it into the GPS. You go out, drink some beer, shoot some pool, get arrested. What? That wasn't part of the plan. Well, that's the map. It's a failed system. Simple as that. So the thought system is failed. It thinks of you as a body. Right there and then it's failed. And it also thinks more about yesterday and tomorrow than it ever does now, because it's never thinking about now. It's using now to think about yesterday and tomorrow. Even the now you think you're in is all bookended by yesterday and tomorrow in the mental state. The here that we think we're in is a mental here. It's produced. The real here isn't full of thoughts. The real here is always available at all times, pristine and beautiful as it always has been. All the tons of thoughts have never filled it. It's an infinite space. The thoughts are never going to overwhelm what you are. It's like the sky is never going to get marked by whatever's appeared in it. No fucking 4th of July ever opened the sky open. No fucking plane runs into a piece of sky when it's flying through. No bird shit lands on the sky when the bird shits it. No. The sky is pristine. It allows everything to appear in it and yet is not affected by anything that appears in it. That's what Big M spirit, Big M mind is. In a sense, from there, nothing ever happened. Everything is happening, but nothing comes to happen. Because you're the only happening there is, what's looking right now. You and I are reality. A little bit of that goes a long way. If it's brought into this life, like Jesus says, supposedly said, you're in this world, but you're not of this world. That's the truth. You're in this world. This is in this world, yes. You're in this world of time and separation and things, but you're not of time, separation, and things. You're of spirit. So it would be non-Paul of spirit would be the right description. Yeah. I am of spirit. I am not of a body. I am seemingly in a body, but I'm not of a body. It's totally different. Like you're in a car, but you're not the fucking son or daughter of a Toyota. Yeah? You're in a car, but you're not of the car. The car did not birth you. So if you're not of the car, you can get out of the car. Because why? You're of something else other than car. So you're not of a body, you're in a body. I don't even believe you're in a body. I think the body's in you, really, the big mind. But let's just say you're in a body, but you're not of a body. Hallelujah. What you're looking for here is brought to you, brought here through you. It comes from the of. Serenity and peace is of, love of, yeah. Wow, I didn't turn it on again today. I always do this. I have only 2 jobs, this video and this, and I'm hitting 50% at it. Fuck, sorry. It's not too difficult, is it? I gotta change this because it shuts off after 30 seconds if I don't say anything. I know I probably could have changed it years ago, but instead I just put up with it and try to fit myself around it like we are apt to do. When I was out there using it, if my left arm was bleeding, I just looked right. I didn't want to fucking deal with anything. And I still have the same patterns as when I'm not. They haven't changed that much. If I can avoid something, I will. I'll tolerate shit. That could have been fixed in 5 seconds for months. Really. I just laugh at it now because, hey, I'm not going to beat up a Toyota for being a Toyota. I mean, it's a utilitarian vehicle. I'm not fucking like a Rose Parade float. I fucking have a lot of dings. I smell. I don't turn well. But hey, it's not me. If it was me, it would be like an urban renewal project. I'd be constantly obsessing. I've got to make this better. That's how you can put that to rest, man. Take care of the addiction, the alcoholism. Yeah? And then see what happens. It's sort of like, it's like being a rose bush that's never bloomed, and it's surrounded by a lot of blooming rose bushes, and it's got self-centeredness, so it's constantly resenting the fuck out of the other roses, and then it's blaming itself for a bad rose bush. It should have bloomed by now. But the fact is, it's very severely challenged because it's in a very tiny pot with lousy soil, getting no water and no light. So that thing that believes it's such a loser and this and that, those are just effects that can be corrected. So if you take that rose bush and put it in a big pot with good soil, some nice water, and some light, it's going to bloom. This is all we are like as action figures. Yeah? The wrong thing has been directing us. Yeah? AA will play the middleman role. If you go submit yourself to it, it'll put you into a bigger pot, it gives you some water and light, and you'll start blossoming and blooming. Yeah? It's always been innately available, it just hasn't had the right conditions. The mental condition is too powerful. The parasite is going to do exactly what parasites do. Suck you dry. It's not going to let you die because you're the only one it has. Yeah, so it's going to, your life's probably going to be prolonged for quite a while. You'll have abscesses and limps and, You'll be on your 8th rehab and 12th institution. You'd be hoping you could die. I remember I used to overdose, and when I came to, I was so fucking pissed because I got parachuted into the same movie. The police were there, the paramedics, I was fucking fuming. You can't get out of what you're not in. You cannot get out of what you're not in. You cannot get out of what you're not in. If you get these fundamental mistakes of how we're proceeding, then real progress can be available. Yeah? But if it's self trying to get out of self, it's just like you're chasing your own tail in a lot of ways. You'll get a lot of relief because the insanity will stop by just your behavioral modification, but the inner peace may be escaping you. You have the ability to enjoy peace of mind. You know, to understand the word serenity and comprehend peace. They may escape you. So, any questions tonight? This is like the non-duality side, and this is the AA side.
Earlier you said that, like, you know, deep sleep is almost more real than this banana shit. I think you said something like that.
I think I took a banana shit the other day.
Would you say almost like the nighttime dream is almost more real than this?
No, they're the same reality. They're neither are
Yeah,
real.
I've had this experience where I'm waking up from a dream, a nighttime dream, and it just blends right into waking up in the morning.
Yeah.
It's a dream, but then I start to just think about stuff, and it's almost the same thing.
It is the same thing. We just don't think so. What better way to deny that we're in a dream by saying we had a dream every night? So we say we had a dream at night so that we don't realize we're in a dream now. The best way to neuter a truth is by you and I claiming it. We make it into something. Like they say in neuroscience now, the observation distorts the observed. That's what happens very fast. Yeah, so when you have something, that something has now been changed by you having it. That's how it works. This is a whole perceptual house of mirrors, this whole event going on. Time is the hugest, biggest influence of all. Watch anyone driving today, they're usually moved by time. All their behaviors coming out of the belief in time. Get out on the highway where you're not going to have nowhere to go, you don't see anyone as threats or obstacles. When you have something where you have to go to, that everything's an obstacle, right? You don't see that you were the one constant in both those events. Maybe you have a lot more to do with what's happening than you imagine. I believe you do, really. I believe you're the dreaming of the dream. That's much different. See, look at recovery. If you look at it, it's gorgeous, really. If you look at the first introductory inventory, which is usually presented as a 4-column inventory. So we're going to look at resentments, which means re-feelings that get kicked up by how we perceive what's happening now. And the re is very important because it's meaning time is a huge part of it. So you're re-feeling something, yes? So resentment, and then there's the fears, and then there's the harms done to others in pursuit of what you want, and we look at sexual behavior. Just, it'll highlight it a little better. So you go in there. So you look at the first 2 columns, and let's say the first column says, well, I resent an institution, person, or whatever. So let's say Wendy. So I resent Wendy. And then the second column is you just write down why. What did Wendy do for me to resent her? Well, she left me, all right? So now everyone in a bar tonight does the first 2 columns. They know they know exactly who they're pissed at and why. But it all leads to is another drink. What AA does is takes another column and another 4th column, and it brings you to see your role in things. God fucking forbid. Your role, and then in seeing your own things, there's a lot of relief there where there isn't any in the second column. when you keep thinking it's other people, yes? Once you see it's what you have to do with it, suddenly a huge amount of relief is available just by that simple movement from the spotlight on them and others to you. This whole, every other spirituality, all it does is brings it farther back. To see your role, really, your huge role in this whole event. Yeah, just like seeing your role in the fourth column brings a lot of relief, seeing your role in this whole place brings a lot of relief. That's all it does. It's just moving. It's like here, if you're looking at something here, this close, and then you keep lifting up, you see it clearer, right? This hasn't moved, this moved, yeah? So the mind moves, and it sees that which it couldn't see clear, it sees clearer. This is all that it is. That's all, that's spiritual elevation in a sense. You now see what you used to look from. You start seeing it, yeah? And then more is revealed. And a lot more is revealed. And then you have an intimate sense of peace because you're in it. Yeah? You know presence because you are it. Yeah? You're now available, and that sort of causes you to be of service because you're present, and present is available, and availability is of being of service, in other words. Yeah? All this happens without any thought effort on your part. You're really just a laboratory experiment. You've now changed the main ingredient, took self out of it and put, let's say, spirit into it, shakes it up, and it comes out totally different than the last experiment of you being an insane fucking addict. Yeah? It does. It's just one ingredient that's changed. Self. You're directed by something else than self. Jesus Christ. You should say, how could it possibly be that an addict of my type, because I was a fucking pro-addict, professional. I rate my devotion to drugs with any spiritual devotee in the history of spirituality. I loved cocaine. I did anything fucking for it. I would go through anything for it. I would take anything from anyone else to get more of it. And I would never fucking leave it, no matter what. Yeah. And yet, you cannot transcend an imaginary condition. That was the dilemma. And it has to do, and the same thing could be applied to spirituality. Self's never going to get out of self. Yeah, you have to see you're not in self, and that's the experience of being out of self. What we do is we have a reminder of that by service. When you do service, you get out of self because you're not that interested in yourself at that second, you know, because you're interested in being available to others. And then you feel the sense that is brought about by your own absence as self. Now that can stabilize, that you can have a sense of this as being absent, and then what's present then as you is that thing you used to search for as a goal. You are what you're looking for, really. So it's beautiful in a lot of ways. Talking about beauty and the antithesis of it, the antithesis has just walked in.
So I turned the camera.
I'll see you over there.
So we're ending though, bro.
I know.
I milked this cow as long as I
Right
can
on
milk
time.
it. All right? Yeah, he doesn't have to come. He's so advanced, so he thinks. He doesn't. He just drives by. Then he calls me and says he was at the meeting. All right. So anyone have any questions?
Just real quick, I keep getting in this cycle out of
You
addiction.
don't.
Oh, well,
Yes.
there's an experience in the cycle
Yeah.
where there's an experience of not identifying with the self. But it doesn't manifest into service, that way of life, way of life of being in service to continue sustaining, not identifying with the self.
Yeah.
I keep encountering this, what gets me back into my addiction is this intolerance towards words and all the little functions that I used to enjoy that I feel like reinforce the sense of self. So I've become more, the interaction with people and what the actions, activities would go into service, it becomes, I have a stage where it's intolerant, and then I become kind of more, I just have all this energy, and the addiction, whatever indulgence, it's like I enjoy that grounding, that coming back to self, because I never have crossed that threshold of that natural inclination toward being of service. And I don't know why, yeah.
Well, because that thing, the selfing has a gravitational pull. So in the beginning, it seems like there's effort and resistance to it. But you have to break through that membrane in a way. So you can't take your own dissertation about where you're at to be true. It's coming from the parasite. So just keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. To me, it's like get on the operating table of AA. Don't get up and don't play doctor, and things go well.
I know it's life-sustaining, but
yes. But you see, the selfing is going to attempt to put itself in between you and that. And it's going to start claiming you don't feel like doing something that you are essentially needed to do right now. This is not a game, because many people who leave our community die. It's not like leaving that, knitting club and they just go knit sweaters with someone else, but a lot of people die, literally. Or worse, they don't die. And it goes on and on and on. I saw it with my friend after 21 years. Wendy went out, and she was very clear at time, very helped a lot of people, wrote books, and she's been going in and out for 7 years now. 7 fucking years. There was no way in hell she ever thought it was going to turn out like that when she thought she could have that drink that night after 21 years. 7 fucking years. Going to the best, whatever, the most expensive places like the Meadows in Arizona, all these places. Having sober friends, paying people to watch her, everything, nothing fucking worked. Now she's back again and it looks different. We'll see what happens. But I'm telling you, man, you and I, knowing that how vicious that big dog can be, while it's asleep in our house, it's not wise to tease it. You don't want that dog to wake up, because if it does, you're going to have to walk it, you're going to have to clean up after it, it's going to bite your friends, your enemies, and you, and you're going to have to feed it tons of fucking food. Yeah? Right now it's asleep, let it stay asleep. Yeah, and then get on with the business at hand, which for you is to be sober as an action figure, and then let the spirit reveal itself, and it will. Yeah? Do not use philosophy to fucking jackpot you concerning your 12 steps, which the mental state is want to do. It would love, you know how many Buddhists I've met who try to use Buddhism and they're now drunk Buddhists? Tons of them. Yes. You were given the card that works for this figure, AA, let's say. Let it use it. Yeah? There's not a better card for you anywhere else. This is love that brought you to it. And just like love brought me to AA. Yeah? And therefore receive that card, let it do its trick, and this will get stabilized. Because I'm telling you, in my own experience, when I was out there near the end, my managing caused me to have to be managed by others. I had to be institutionalized. I would only last a few weeks out there. I would get into so much trouble so quickly, someone had to put a stop to it. I couldn't. Yeah, this is where it ended up. There was only one square left, and it was someone else's square. That's 2 years in Delancey Street, tons of jail time here and there, warrants galore in Alameda looking for my ass. I got a letter when I was sober after 11 years from the fugitive squad from Nassau County, Long Island, asking me to go back to Long Island and surrender to the authorities. And I said, oh yes, I'm going to jump on a plane right now. Well, I'm in for Trail. So yes, I'm going to buy the ticket. No, of course I'm not going to fucking go back to Long Island to give myself up. Luckily, my brother-in-law was the lawyer for a judge, and he checked it out. He said, just don't come home for a while. But you know what I mean? this is what can happen. And you know, the philosophy you think you have will be washed down its fucking toilet system. It'll eat it for breakfast. This is about recognizing, just like the diabetic, they can wake up and be enlightened, but they probably still take insulin. Yeah, this brain is warped. You have alcoholism. Yes, it's pregnantly. It's a possibility latently there if you're sober, and then actively there if you're not. But it's there. Yeah, it can get triggered after 20 years, after one day. It doesn't matter. Why would you want to live in that minefield? Just get into the habits of doing what takes care of it. Yeah? And then you'll have the freedom to entertain other possibilities. Because you won't be having police knocking on your door when you're trying to meditate. You know what I mean? Your action for your life will be more conducive to possibilities that we call spiritual ones. Yeah? So, yes. All right, that's it. Turn that button off.